Danny Trejo, the actor, recently weighed in on whether or not ex-cons should be allowed to vote in all 50 states. Most people would recognize Danny Trejo if they saw him. You might not be familiar with his name. He was in Machete, a lot of movies actually, a lot of cameos, not a whole bunch of starring roles, but he has been in a lot of famous movies. Heat, Anaconda, From Dusk Till Dawn, and I always saw him as a solid actor. He came from a more rough background out here in Los Angeles. That's where I'm from as well. And he's actually a lot older than I realized when I did a bit more research on him. I didn't realize this man was damn near 80 years old. And he looks pretty good for his age. And I'm gonna go ahead and play the video so we could see what his thoughts were on the subject. I'm gonna put it up on the screen for you guys to see as well.
Less than 2 weeks out from election day, should prisoners be allowed to vote while they're serving their time? Should they be allowed to vote while they're on probation and or parole?
Well, I think anybody out of prison should be able to vote, whether on parole or probation. And I honestly believe right now that if you're in the county jail, that's before you've gone to prison, you're in the county jail, you should be able to vote because you haven't been convicted,
right?
You know, and
fair point.
And basically, but in prison it's a different story. You know, prison you're already sentenced to.
There's actually
So far, I do agree with that. If you are still in society, I believe that you should have a say-so in society. And I do believe in reform, so I believe if someone actually sincerely changes, which change always starts with self, if someone changes themselves sincerely, which does happen, I know individuals that came from a street life and you wouldn't even know that they came from that life unless you pay very close attention to certain things, but they've been out the streets for decades. I know individuals like this. So it's my belief that once you're in society again, you should be back in society in totality. You should have a say-so. So I do agree with him so far. They should have a say-so.
11 states that do not allow you once you've been convicted. What do you think? Like, you think that's wrong?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. You know, it's one of our rights,
right?
Constitutional rights. You know, the right to vote. You paid your debt.
What do you think of the work Trump has done for prison reform?
The work Trump has done? I honestly believe that Kim Kardashian has done more than Trump.
You think? he has.
She has done some things.
He's enacted the First Step Act, so he has done work for prison reform.
I don't know of the work that he's done, you know, because
First Step Act.
Prison reform means that you have to understand that probably 10% of the people that are in prison belong in prison.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know about that. That seems a bit much, a bit of an overstatement. Then again, I've never served time in prison, and he served a lot of years in prison, so he would know better than I.
10%.
Yeah.
Now that means there's what, 90% of people that shouldn't even be in prison.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It's like they should have been drug addicts. It's like, there's no way a drug addict is supposed to go to prison.
Right.
It's a disease.
So he does bring up good points, and some of what he says I don't totally agree. As far as what Trump has done for prison reform, I'll let you guys tell me about that because I'm not too familiar with his First Step Act as far as what it did exactly. But I know living in California, same as Danny, that we have a ton of prisons out here, and we have, I believe, the largest prison population. I am a believer in reform, and like I've stated, reform starts with self. So as long as the individual has been removed from the streets, they are no longer getting petty charges. They're completely removed from the streets. I think that, of course, we should welcome them back into society, because you have to be a completely different person in order to remove yourself entirely from a street life. And I've worked with individuals that have came from certain backgrounds, and I have people in my family that have came from certain backgrounds, and there are some of them to where you wouldn't even know that they came from that background unless they told you. Every now and then you might see little subtle signs. You might see a certain injury on their body, and you're wondering how they get that kind of injury. You know, might be a gunshot wound. His latest interview not too long ago, it was done about a year ago, Danny Trejo's interview with Vlad TV, where, you know, some people, they don't like Vlad very much, but he did have an extensive interview with Danny Trejo where he went into his background prior to him getting into acting, and he definitely came from a very rough background. So I could definitely see why he would sympathize with people that have lived that life, that were really in the streets for real, which he was. Back in the 60s, I believe between the 60s and 70s, a whole decade, he was in and out of prison with various crimes, various charges. But eventually he did remove himself entirely from the streets. I do disagree with Danny when he said that he believes that people that are on probation should have the right to vote, because any violation and they will end up back in prison. So I don't believe that an individual that's on probation should have the right to vote, because they aren't fully back in society yet. But once an individual is fully back in society, I believe they should have a right. Moves themselves from a certain environment and they're living a whole new life. Is it not fair for them to have a say-so in their new environment? If they are truly living in this new environment, should they not have a say-so? I believe that they should have a say-so, but I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think that ex-cons, felons, should be allowed to vote? What are your guys' thoughts on that?